Hello, my friends. Welcome, welcome. It's Monday, 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 da-da, right? Here we are. It's 3 o'clock on Monday, and we are here live. Mondays at 3 are my time. It's my jam. We're going to do lots of different things. For the month of October, we're going to be discussing ADHD, attention, and focus. So as you might guess, I work with many children and have worked in the past with many children that have been diagnosed with ADHD, who do or do not take medication, pharmacotherapy for ADHD. So I have had some experience with this. I'm also a trained special ed teacher. So some of you may not know that I used to teach special education. So I want to talk a little bit about ADHD and really go over some of the research, some of the myths, some of the misinformation, and sort of help explain what I think is happening here with ADHD. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. First of all, ADHD, what is that? What is that? So it stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Okay, ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Now, there are different types of ADHD. You could have ADD, or they usually say ADHD without hyperactivity. Okay, so here's the issue with the definition. Okay, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There are two issues that I feel are here. First of all, it's implying that students, children, adults, whoever, individuals that have been diagnosed with ADHD have a deficit in attention. Okay, that's what it says in the definition, attention deficit. However, there is zero deficit in attention. Individuals that have this diagnosis have no problem, they have plenty of attention. It's just not necessarily being directed in the right places at the right time. Okay, so let me say that again. The definition is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which implies that individuals lack attention. There's a deficit in attention, and that is incorrect. It's that there is an issue with their ability to regulate that attention, to move that attention to where they want it to go. Okay, so that's the first issue I have with this definition. The second issue I have with this definition is that it's a deficit model. Okay, so attention deficit, it's right there in the name. And in the second part, hyperactivity disorder. When we look at individuals through a deficit lens, we're always looking at what they cannot do, what they're struggling with, what's the issue here. It's assuming that there's something wrong with you, all right? And this is not always helpful, and I'll tell you why. Although it can be useful to have an understanding of some of these diagnoses that come out of the DSM 5 now that we're in, although it can be helpful to have an understanding of them, they don't lend themselves to any kind of instruction or treatment. Okay, so you cannot put 5 kids that have this same definition, this same diagnosis in front of me, and I would do the same thing for each of those 5 children, because every child has different strengths and roadblocks. And when we talk about kids or adults, when we talk about individuals and through this deficit lens, we're always assuming there is something wrong, there is something broken, right, about this person. So those are the two main issues that I have with the definition right out of the gate, is that it's a deficit model and it is assuming that there is a lack of attention, which is absolutely incorrect. Okay, so it's also another myth here is that it's a behavior disorder. Okay, attention deficit ADHD, as it is spelled out, is not a I'm sorry, I keep hitting my desk here and my screen is jumping. I'm getting excited. It's not a behavior disorder. It is not a mental illness, and it's not a learning disability. Okay, so I'm going to talk really slow here because this is confusing stuff. ADHD is not a behavior disorder. It is not a mental health issue, and it is not a learning disability, my friends. So then you're asking the obvious question, which is, what is it then? What is ADHD? Okay, well, it is a delay in executive functioning. Okay, it is a delay or a deficit in executive functioning skills. And what the heck does that mean? Well, executive functioning skills are these skills that we have, which I'm pointing to this part of my brain here, the prefrontal cortex, which is where we kind of associate executive skills with, although we know that the brain is a complex place to be, and that all of these brain areas really are connected. So what do the executive skills consist of? Well, working memory, okay? Both auditory and non-auditory working memory. So being able to hold things in your mind. So that means someone is talking to me and they're telling me directions, and I'm able to hold that information in my mind that I have to first go upstairs to find my socks before I put my socks on and my shoes on, right? That is working memory. Also, that's auditory if someone is telling me, but also working memory can be non-auditory. So for example, you are reading your way through in your mind, you're reading a math problem, and by the time you get to the end of the sentence, you've forgotten the beginning of the sentence. All right, so that's the working memory. That is an executive functioning skill. Regulating your attention is an executive functioning skill. What do I mean by that? I mean being able to sustain your attention, meaning to kind of laser beam in on something and keep it there. That is a skill of sustaining attention. There's also the skill of being able to shift your attention to where you want it to go. So this is another issue with students who have this diagnosis of ADHD. Basically, a lot of the issues are with being able to selectively place their attention where they want it to go. Because for you and for me, maybe when we have the normative developing brain, we have almost like, if you think of it like, there's a bunch of doors in front of me, right? And when I'm speaking to you, I'm opening that door, and you're on the other side and we are having a conversation. Well, sometimes with students that have ADHD, all of the doors are opened all of the time. And there's a dog barking behind one, and there's somebody sharpening a pencil behind the other, and the phone's ringing behind that door. And everything is coming together. So you and I can maybe filter out that extraneous information, same way that when we're reading a passage, we can cull out the main idea or the most important point. Whereas children who have this deficit in executive functioning, or adults, they're not able to pull out that important information. Hi, Stace. Hi, Patty. So executive functioning skills, working memory, regulating our attention, monitoring our attention. So when you're reading from the top of the page to the bottom, noticing when you've gotten distracted and started making a list in your head, right? Self-monitoring, so being able to logically planfully think about what you're going to say before you say it, all right? Problem solving, managing our time, organizing, and prioritizing. All of these are executive functioning skills. Hey, Pam. And so what's happening with ADHD is a few things. The first thing that's happening is that students who show up in your classrooms or in your lives who are displaying the symptoms of ADHD, which on the surface, it looks like poor behavior, okay? It looks like I'm giving directions or I'm telling you to do something and you have your own agenda and you're doing whatever you want, okay? That sometimes is what it looks like. Other times it looks like I'm giving you a direction and you're staring out the window, okay? Or you're lost in thought in your own mind. So those are like emotional distractions, things that are happening in the mind that are distracting to someone. And there's also things that distract us out in the environment. So the symptoms are really like the tip. Think about the iceberg, right? The tip of the iceberg is what we see. So kids that have these ADHD type symptoms, their book bags are a complete disaster mess, right? They don't follow our directions ever, or they do when they feel like it. They sometimes have behavior issues. They have trouble getting along with other children in their peer groups because they're not able to really attend to the social cues that they need to be paying attention to. There's a lot of symptoms, right? But the thing that's really going on is this deficit in executive skills. Now, a lot of people ask me, so why are we seeing so much of this now? Okay, why are we seeing so much of this ADHD now? Why does everybody have ADHD? Well, my friends, there's a few reasons, but one of the reasons is because we are pushing the curriculum down on children before they're developmentally ready to receive it. Okay, let me say that again. We are pushing curriculum down on our students, on children, before they are developmentally ready to receive it. So 20 years ago, 30 years ago, reading was a 6-year-old skill, okay? Reading was something you learned in first grade, my friends. Thank you for all the hearts. Reading was something you learned in first grade. Nowadays, if you enter kindergarten and you are not reading, that is seen as a problem in some places. So we're dealing with the same children. We are dealing with the same developmental trajectory of the brain, but what's changed is society. So there's this mismatch, right? And what looks like a child who's not able to sit still, right? We get these common perceptions of a child who has trouble with attention as like fidgety and, always up out of their seat, right? Well, part of the problem is that we're asking 5-year-olds to do what 6 to 7-year-olds were doing 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And there's this mismatch, right? So sometimes children are being misdiagnosed. And I am going to tell you right now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I've been in education my whole life, but I am not a doctor. However, a diagnosis of ADHD is a set of scales. It's a set of scales that's given out to teachers that is self-reports from parents and information from observations of individuals around a child. I do think that it is an actual thing. I'm not saying it is fake. I am just saying that there is a pushing down of curriculum that is a mismatch for our children's development, and at times it's lending itself to an overdiagnosis of ADHD. Now, why is this important? Well, because ADHD, if we look at this developmentally, it is not something where we get this diagnosis slapped on us and then that's it. There's a broken part of the brain or there's something that's wrong with you. It is a delay in the development of these executive functioning skills. And guess what, guys? Executive functioning skills can be taught. They can be taught. So we can help our children develop strong executive functioning skills. And mindfulness practices are one of the ways that we can strengthen executive functioning skills. So when we teach kids how to be in charge of their attention, how to notice when they're distracted and bring themselves back with just by normalizing the fact that that's going to happen, when we give them the tools to be able to do that, then they're able to be successful. So why I wanted to talk about ADHD and focusing and attention, and I'm going to get into later in the month all of the stuff around technology and all that. But what I wanted to start with today was, what is ADHD and what is it not? Okay, it is not a behavior disorder. It is not a mental health issue, and it is not a learning disability. It is a delay or an impairment in executive functioning skills. Working memory, prioritizing, organization, emotional regulation, attentional control, problem solving. Okay, so those are the things that need to be remediated when we have a child or an adult or someone who is presenting with these kinds of symptoms. All right, so that's where we're going to start with this conversation. And I would love for your comments on this topic. I would love to have your questions in the comments of things you'd like me to discuss around ADHD, or even about attention, about the way the technology is affecting attention or focus. All that stuff. I'm happy to share that with you. I just want to reference a couple of books that I really love that I would recommend. One of them is by one of my friends and colleagues, Mark Burton. He's actually a pediatrician, and he wrote this really wonderful book, How Children Thrive. Really excellent, and really the whole book is pretty much about executive functioning skills and in like easy to understand language. Another place where I pull some of my knowledge from is Dan Goleman, who wrote this book called Focus. There are parts of this book that I really love and parts of this book that I would not recommend. However, if you really want to take a deep dive into understanding attention, if you're into the brain science and sort of understanding the whole systems approach, I would recommend Dan Goleman, the Focus book. So please, if you can, like and share the video for today. It definitely helps, and I would appreciate it. And please submit your comments. What are your thoughts as I discuss this from a developmental perspective versus a deficit model? What are you seeing in your life with your children or with your students? And what topics would you like me to hit on as I move into October, talking about attention, focus, inattention, all of that good stuff? Okay, my friends, have a great rest of your day. Take good care.